Good evening, folks, and welcome back to my channel. Tonight's video features 3 stories from r/nosleep. If you enjoy the stories, be sure to check out the authors. And if you enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like and a comment. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And with that, enjoy the stories. I used to work as a mall Santa, but one boy's Christmas list made me quit. Written by WendigoRoar from the nosleep subreddit. It was the 3rd time that day that I felt an unnatural warmth begin where the child was sitting on my leg. I'd grown past being disgusted by it. As I felt the first drops hit my leg inside the suit and began to roll down my leg, I lifted the boy under the armpits, set him on his feet next to the chair, and stood up. He started crying, and the piece of paper he was gripping tightly in his little fist fell from his hand as he smothered his tears in his palms. "Hey, little man, it's okay," I said. "It happens. Let's get you to your mom so you can get cleaned up." I looked up and saw a pretty blonde woman with arms full of shopping bags was already hurrying over, alerted either by the tears or the enormous wet spot on her son's pants. "I'm his mom," she said through rapid breaths from the hustle over. "Hi, ma'am," I said as she walked up. "It seems like we've had a bit of an accident." The mom's face flushed, clearly a bit embarrassed. "Oh, I'm so sorry. This has never happened before," she said. "It's really okay. Part of the job," I said, chuckling. The little dude was still bawling, which, fair. I generally don't love being covered in urine either, now not being an exception. I gave him my very best Santa head pat and told him again that it was okay. "Please, Santa, you have to let us get you cleaned up," the mom said. "Really, it's okay. I've got spare pants in the mall supply closet, and I can wash down real quick in there too," I told her. "Can I at least pay you for the cleaning costs?" I quickly glanced down at her hand and saw no rings. "The mall already handles all of that. But maybe you would let me buy you a drink sometime," I asked, hope in my voice. I thought maybe I could turn this pee situation into something nice after all. The mom smiled, this adorable, bashful smile, some of the flush returning to her cheeks. "That would be lovely," she said. "But you better not tell Mrs. Claus." "Oh, don't worry. There's no Mrs. Claus," I said, laughing. She grabbed a slip of scrap paper and a pen from a purse buried under the shopping bags and scribbled down her phone number. "My name's Molly, by the way," she said. "Give me a call when you're finished here, Santa." She grinned and walked off. I was thrilled. I ended up getting washed up and changed, and back out to work in just about 15 minutes. The rest of the day was pretty low-key, no more urine incidents. At the end of the day, I started helping tear down some of the parts of the North Pole scene that I sat in, when I noticed a crumbled piece of paper. Remembering that Molly's boy had dropped his list when he came up, I absent-mindedly shoved it into my pocket to give to her when we met up again. After finishing packing up and getting changed, I jumped in my car and raced home. I wanted to at least take a shower and get myself cleaned up, to prove to her that I wasn't just some loser in a urine-soaked Santa costume. Getting up to my apartment, I pulled out the paper in my pocket and dropped it on my kitchen island. Grabbing my cell phone, I spun the piece of paper with Molly's phone number on it so that it faced me and dialed her number. As the phone rang, I noticed some bright colors on the crumbled list to Santa. The little guy must have drawn a picture for the jolly red-suited fella. I pulled it closer to me and was about to take a look when I heard the line connect. "Hello?" I heard Molly ask. "Hi," I said, cheerfully, absently pushing aside the drawing. It's Santa," Molly laughed.
I've been looking forward to your call,
she said. I'm glad to hear it, I said. Would you be up for having a drink tonight?
Of course,
she replied, a smile in her tone. She gave me the address of a favorite pub near her place. I promised to grab a quick shower and then text her when I was on my way.
Oh, and Santa,
she said right before I hung up.
Why don't you bring that Santa suit for later? You never know, I just might end up on your naughty list.
She giggled and hung up. So you can be sure I packed the Santa outfit. I took a quick shower with multiple dousings of soap to prize the faint scent of pee from me. I figured that might be a turnoff for Molly. I mean, she's Santa suit kinky, but I'm not sold she's also golden shower kinky. Getting out and getting dressed in a hurry, I snagged my cell phone and Molly's son's list from the counter as I headed out the door. On the elevator ride down to the parking area, I shot Molly a quick text telling her I was on my way. Fidgeting with the paper in my hands, I remembered that I had wanted to look at the picture to Santa. Opening it up, I saw a nightmare etched in crayon across the page. Within the childish scratchings, I could make out a red-suited man with a thick white beard and a Santa hat lying strapped to a bed. Kneeling above him, a woman with blonde hair and no clothes was holding a thin gray object in the air. Dark red crayon erupted from the red-suited man's neck. The boy had drawn his mother murdering a man dressed as Santa mid-sexcapade. The elevator reached the ground floor and I stood still in shock for so long that the doors opened and then reclosed, assuming I had gotten out. I kept staring at the drawing and I noticed, seemingly muted by the geyser of red, a shape under the bed. It looked like a small boy huddled, hands over his ears, hiding under the fountaining viscera. I gasped and took an involuntary step back, almost tripping over the bag full of Santa suit I had set on the floor next to me. The elevator started moving up again, startling me. I yelped. When the doors opened, it was at my floor. I rushed out, bumping into my neighbor, who said something pissy to my back as they headed into the elevator. I unlocked my door, rushed in, and slammed it behind me, throwing the deadbolt. As the shock and adrenaline worked its way through my veins, I fell back against the door, slowly sliding down it until I sat on the floor. Eventually, I broke down and cried, grasping the drawing, the warning the boy had given me, tightly in my hand, just like he had this morning. And that was when my phone started ringing. It was Molly. I barricaded the front door to the cheerful ringtone as it rang over and over and over. Don't go Christmas tree hunting after dark in northern Canada. Written by Jgrupe from the nosleep subreddit. When I was growing up, every Christmas we would go out hunting for a tree. The perfect one, just the right size, to put up in our living room. It was always an excursion. Going out into the countryside, crammed into the snow-covered car in our winter wear. My mom and dad, my brother Noel, and I. The four of us were an unstoppable team, heading out into the white wilderness to find that one ideal specimen to hack down and drag home with us, so that we could decorate it in tinsel and cover it with ornaments, lights, and all the works. Every year it was our tradition, until one year it wasn't. My dad passed away a couple years back, and with all this pandemic business, it doesn't look like we'll be doing much as a family this Christmas for the first time I can remember. It was with this feeling of melancholy and neglected nostalgia in mind that I hopped into my car on a whim and drove out into the snow-covered countryside to find a Christmas tree. The whole thing was a bit out of the ordinary for me, but I was feeling stir-crazy sitting in my apartment. I had just been quarantined for a week due to an exposure at work and had finally gotten back the negative test results and subsequent all clear to venture outdoors again. After days of Uber Eats, watching reruns and old Christmas movies, I could finally leave my house. I couldn't remember where the place was that we had gone to as kids, so I just drove around until I found a farm with a sign out front. It took a couple hours, but I liked that lost feeling, that sense of misdirection that none of us experience anymore since we all have GPS and cell phones. I had turned my phone off and put it in my glove box, vowing not to use it for the trip, instead just wandering until I finally found that sign I was looking for. Christmas trees, it read, $40 each, bring your own saw, BYOS. Perfect, I thought, just like the old days. I pulled into the frozen gravel lot and parked. It was getting a bit late in the day, so the few people in the parking lot were already tying trees to the roofs of their cars and throwing them in the backs of pickup trucks. "Better hurry," said a man in a flannel shirt and overalls as I got out of my car. "Gets dark early nowadays. Don't want to be stuck out there after the sun goes down. Gets cold quick in these parts." I was immediately struck by his intimidating height. Being 6'5" myself, I don't often run into someone taller than me. He looked down at me, and I thought he had to be above 7 feet tall. His skin was stretched, taut over prominent cheekbones, and he appeared emaciated and malnourished. "Thanks," I said. "I haven't done this since I was a kid. Hopefully I still remember how to work a hacksaw." He looked at me crooked for a second, then smiled in a slightly creepy way. His teeth were yellow and nicotine-stained. His eyes looked yellow as well. His skin rough and covered in sores. "You never forget how to use a hacksaw. It's like riding a bike. But remember what I said about the darkness and the cold. You from around here?" "Yeah, more or less. Why?" He watched me for another second, chewing a wad of something sticky and brown in his mouth as he did. "Just make sure you're back at your car by sundown. Lots of animals out, and not much to eat this time of year." "What kind of animals?" "All kinds. Wolves, coyotes, other things too." I assumed he was the unstable owner of the place, and guessed by his comments that he was slightly insane. One of his eyes was looking at me and the other was staring off into the distance. The parking lot was soon abandoned as all the other cars seemed to leave at the same time as I prepared to go out. Trudging through the snow, bundled up with my hacksaw in hand, I proceeded into the forest of Christmas trees, and he stood and watched me go. Near the parking lot, the trees are all too large to fit in my living room. It took a while to get into the decent ones, and I found a lot of the best specimens had been taken. This one had a hole the size of a basketball in the boughs. That one was already starting to turn brown and looked sick. Too small, too large, too skinny, too tall, too fat, wouldn't fit. Before I knew it, I realized I was having trouble seeing where I was going. The sun had been suddenly setting behind my back. I tripped over something and fell into the snow. When I got up, my gloves were damp and I realized my feet were starting to feel numb. It was suddenly getting very cold. Okay, I thought to myself, just pick one and get out of here. All of the trees looked sick and dying, I realized now. They were missing large sections and none of them looked suitable for use. I settled on a random one after another couple minutes and quickly hacked it down with the saw. By the time I was done, it was pretty much completely dark outside. I thought again about the man's warning to return to my car before it got dark, and started to get nervous and wonder why he had been so insistent. Perhaps there are wolves, a voice in my mind said. Or bears. Maybe there are wendigos. Why did I have to think about that? As I walked through the knee-deep snow, dragging this sick-looking little tree behind me, I remembered what I had read about them. Wendigos were a creature first mentioned in Canadian First Nations folklore, and I had once done a project on them for school. I discovered through my research that a Wendigo is an evil, malevolent spirit. It is fueled by greed and loves the cold. Prefers its victims hungry, like those found in remote regions during winter months. It possesses people and causes Wendigo psychosis, a condition diagnosed by psychiatrists, symptoms including cravings for human flesh. Those who are possessed want to eat people. For every person the creature kills and consumes, its gaunt and skinny frame grows taller, thus never feeling satisfied. It is towering in its height, thin and human-like, but motivated only by greed and an insatiable hunger for human flesh. Wendigo tend to appear in the winter when food is scarce. They love the cold. They are drawn in by starvation and ice-cold freezing despair. My stomach rumbled with hunger. Snap out of it, I told myself. I thought I heard something. Footsteps in the snow behind me. I stopped walking and turned around quickly to look. No one. I began to walk again. The darkness was nearly total, but my eyes had adjusted enough not to trip as I trudged along through the deep snow, dragging the tree by its trunk. That was when I heard the sound again. Footsteps. Closer this time. Movement of another person walking in the snow. I turned around and the sound stopped. But I had to be sure that time. Someone was following me. Hello? I looked around, scanning the shadows in the direction where I had heard the noise. Is someone there? No one. Hesitantly, I turned around and began to march again. My thighs now numb from the cold. My toes had gone from a wet and frozen pins and needles sensation I associated with childhood tobogganing excursions to now suddenly feeling painful and dead. The temperature had plunged rapidly. I hadn't checked the forecast, but this seemed unnatural. It felt like it was minus 30 degrees Celsius. My breath plumed out in the air in front of me, and my hands began to shake involuntarily. Suddenly my teeth were chattering and I was having trouble walking, my legs not wanting to move. The sound was coming behind me again, much closer now. I turned around and this time it didn't stop. It didn't try to hide. The thing coming at me looked very much like the man from the parking lot, but he was no longer human. Maybe he never was in the first place. His plaid shirt was torn and it looked like he had grown taller than before and was now pushing 8 feet. Jaundiced eyes full of hate and hunger stared at me as he raced towards me, his long legs making him move quickly in the snow. For a moment I was frozen there, in more ways than one. It felt like the closer he got, the colder it was. If anything propelled me to escape from him, it was that. I didn't want to feel that freezing dread for 1 second longer. It felt like death. My heart racing, I dropped the tree and ran. The fear I felt as I raced through the snow was indescribable. Have you ever been so afraid that your body doesn't feel real anymore? Your muscle memory doing everything for you, telling your body to run and you don't even have time to think. You just run. The problem is when there's an 8-foot-tall Wendigo chasing after you and they're obviously hungry and fast as hell. That's when it doesn't matter how quick you can run, because you're still gonna die. I heard him gaining on me, and I knew if I looked back I would die. Just that brief, momentary lack of focus would be enough to cause my demise. My heart skipped a beat as I felt it swipe at my clothing and nearly grab a hold of me, and I realized I would never get away by running like this. I could hear its breath behind me, very close, breathing heavily as it ran. Headlights flashed suddenly, illuminating me, and I heard the Wendigo scream and duck away. The parking lot was to my left, I realized. I had reached it just as the creature was about to grab hold of me. It would have still, if not for this one random person pulling into the parking lot. I heard the Wendigo running off back into the trees, clearly terrified of the light. My heart hammering, I walked towards the parking lot. I wanted to thank whoever it was in the car, since they had saved me. Even if it hadn't been intentional, it had happened. Interestingly, the car looked familiar. I realized as I walked over to it. My older brother Noel rolled down his window, and the expression on his face revealed a total lack of surprise or any other emotion. "No! You saved me, man! Thank you! There was something chasing me out there in the woods." "A Wendigo?" he asked. Yeah. How did you know? And how did you know I was out here?" "Mom told me you went out looking for a tree, and there's only a couple places you can go these days. I got worried about you. Don't you remember what Dad always told us?" The memories started to flood back to me. I had never forgotten what my father had warned us over and over again. No wonder the advice from the man in the parking lot had been so familiar. "Never go hunting for Christmas trees after dark," I said. "But what does that have to do with Wendigos?" "Man, think about it. Those guys love the cold, right? And they love when people are hungry. What are the two things you always remember feeling when we went looking for Christmas trees as kids?" My stomach rumbled again, louder this time. Had I skipped dinner before coming out here? Point taken. My whole body is completely frozen solid, totally numb, and I'm starving. "Follow me," he said. "I'll drive to the nearest burger place and we'll get a bite to eat and get you warmed up." I got into my car with one last parting glance at the woods. Yellow eyes gleamed from the darkness. Maybe I'll get a veggie burger for a while. Every year on Christmas Eve, an entity takes me from this world and brings me to the next. If I'm abducted this year, I may never return. Written by Christoper Maxim from the nosleep subreddit. It all started when I was a little girl. Christmas Eve 2004. I was 8 years old.
"Santa, is that you?"
Footfalls on the staircase echoed through the house as I jumped out of bed and ran past the doorframe to catch a glimpse of the man himself. I waited patiently in the hall just outside my room. An outline appeared at the top of the stairs and then slowly made its way to me. The floorboards struggled to hold its weight as the sound of bending wood ricocheted off the walls and burrowed into my ears. Once the figure reached me, its form was illuminated, bathed in the dim moonlight that shone through my bedroom window and leaked out into the hallway. My excitement was immediately replaced with pure terror. The thing standing in front of me was not Santa, not by a long shot. It was a walking shadow, a dense patchwork of pitch blackness in the shape of a man. I could neither breathe evenly in its presence, nor could I bring myself to run. Petrified in a state of shock. Then he made his move. Darkness spilled out from the shadow man's hands as he extended his arms out over me. Soon I was encased in it, all light fading from view. Aside from the pounding in my chest, all sound had ceased as well.
"Daddy!"
All I could think to do was call out to my father. Surely he would rescue me from this nightmare.
"Daddy, help! I'm in here!"
Of course, he never showed. Wherever I was, whatever energy had enveloped me, I was now unreachable. My connection to the outside world was lost, and I was alone. Before the inclination to cry or scream further could kick in, my tomb broke apart and dissipated entirely, revealing new surroundings. I wasn't home anymore. Not even close. Despite the circumstances, it was breathtaking. Less a place than it was an endless expanse. There were constellations all around, at my sides, above, and even below me. The only thing that separated us was a thin, almost transparent glow. It made up a floor beneath my feet, a ceiling overhead, and walls, barely visible in the distance. It was an inexplicable light box off in some segment of the universe, partitioned from the rest. An absurd but brilliant architecture resting in the framework of space. In admiring the stars and galaxies, I took a dreadful sight. The Shadow Man was there with me, just a few yards from my position. He bolted in my direction and I ran, faster than I had ever run before. Escape, however, was not an option. We were in an enclosed environment. Large as it may have been, there were no exits, or at least none that I knew of. Still guided by a pervasive fear, I ran. I ran until my lungs caught fire and my legs gave out. I collapsed, and that's when he struck. The predator leaned over his wounded prey and placed his hands over my chest. From there, I was drained. Not of my energy, but something else. A swirl of glowing particles arose from my body as the silhouette craned his neck back in satisfaction, like a wolf howling at the moon. His dark, featureless face will forever be etched into my memory. And then, as I was nearly sucked dry of whatever it was the shadow sought from me, my consciousness wavered. In a matter of seconds, my eyelids drooped and the lights went out. At the time, I thought it was death taking hold. Even at 8 years old, I welcomed it. Anything to end the torment. But as luck would have it, this was not death chasing and torturing me in a light box among the stars. It was something far worse. I woke in my bed, my father stationed at my side, trying his best to calm me. "Come on, sweetie, it's okay. It was just a nightmare." I wrapped my arms around him and squeezed as tightly as I could, elated to see him again when, just moments before, I was convinced I never would.
It was a monster. It was gonna get me.
He pulled my arms away and held my hands in his, looking me right in the eye. "It was just a bad dream. I won't let anyone hurt you, okay, Chelsea? Not ever." His words were comforting, but he was wrong.
It wasn't a dream. You have to believe me, Daddy.
He sighed and smiled. "Well, there's nothing we can do about it now. I'll leave the door open a crack and you try to get some sleep, okay?" I nodded and he left, but I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. It wasn't a dream. I was certain of that. Every bone in my body rattled and the skin around them crawled at the mere thought of the Shadow Man and his light box. It was real. I knew it was. The years came and went. Every Christmas Eve was the same. Creaks on the stairs followed by the Shadow Man taking me to his light box and bleeding me of my life force. Then I would wake in my father's arms as he consoled me to the best of his ability. No matter how much I insisted it was all true, my psychiatrist and father both believed it to be a recurring nightmare, nothing more. Eventually, I stopped screaming in the middle of the night and pretended to be normal, if for no other reason than to be treated as such. I lied and told them it was over. From that point forward, no one would ever have to know but me. It was my cross and mine alone to bear. More time passed and I grew up. I graduated from college and bought a house of my own. The light box stayed with me every step of the way, but I never backed down, outright refusing to let it control my life. This attitude gave me strength in the face of trauma, and for a while it felt like I was winning. The Christmas Eves didn't get any easier, but the fear and misery I experienced in the aftermath that followed was fading faster with each passing year. If this was something I had to live with, at least I could do it on my own terms. It's what she would have wanted. But then, the unthinkable happened. Christmas Eve 2019. This would be the first holiday I spent in my new home. The sound was identical to the one from my childhood. Though I had grown used to the routine, it didn't stop me from hoping each year that it would finally be over, especially now being in a new location for the first time. Location, of course, didn't matter. I was its focus, not the place. I hid under my blankets as the goosebumps started forming. Being used to the routine also didn't afford me a thicker skin in the moments leading up to each event. As soon as it began, I was transformed into an 8-year-old girl again, frightened of the boogeyman. This was it. I steeled myself and braced for the worst. The milky black fog then seeped under the covers and engulfed me completely, placing me in an all-too-familiar coffin. From there, the darkness relented and transferred me to that godforsaken lightbox in the sky. Everything looked the same, just as it always had, save for one glaring difference. The Shadow Man was gone. In his place, a gentleman in turn-of-the-century attire, sitting at a desk. "Hello, Chelsea. Please have a seat. I think it's time we talked." I was floored. This had never happened before. There was never any dissonance in past events across years of being abducted. It was always the same. "I see that you're confused. Please have a seat and all will be explained." The feelings that washed over me in this moment were many. Relief over not being chased again, hopeful that this was the end of many tortured holidays, and even proud that I had somehow ended it myself, having stood my ground over the years. The one that bubbled to the surface above all the rest, however, was curiosity. That's why I did as instructed and sat at the desk across from the mystery man, anticipating the answers he could offer me. "Okay, Chelsea, fire away. What is it you want to know first?" I pondered a moment and then asked, "What is this place?" The man smiled. "It's the place where your kind come to rest after expiration." "Expiration?" I asked. "You mean death?" "Yes. Not here specifically, of course. This is just where we harvest energy." I looked around at the vast emptiness. "Really? There's nothing here." The man chuckled. "Of course there is. You just can't see it. We're a loose collection of molecules doing work at a subatomic level, myself included. I only took this form to make things easier for you. Here, have a visual representation." The man snapped his fingers, and all at once the lightbox vanished. We were still at the desk, but were now at the center of a massive office space, surrounded by what must have been thousands of cubicles, all with their own workers, rifling through documents and filing cabinets and answering phone calls. I looked back to the man, still confused. "I don't understand. Is this heaven? Are you angels? What's going on?" He scoffed. "Angels? Heaven? That's just what you humans call us. Here, we're just celestial overseers in the next world. No labels, just work and dedication." Nothing was making sense. Why am I here? Why is any of this happening to me? The man offered a look of vague concern. "Well, Chelsea, heaven doesn't run on will alone. It needs energy to keep going, and we take it from people like you." A short man with glasses hobbled over with a stack of paperwork. Overseer, what should I do with... Not now, Lucian! Can't you see I'm busy? Lucian's eyes widened with regret. Sorry, sir. He took off into the maze of cubicles, a trail of papers left on the floor in his wake. I'm sorry about that. It's so hard to find good help these days. Where were we? Oh yes, energy. He leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. Despair is the greatest energy reserve in the universe. One soul's worth is enough to power heaven for years. Because of that, we send operatives out every now and again to collect soul pieces from humans. You were the next candidate on our list. Me? Why? He leaned forward, his lips contorted into a wicked smile. Your mother's death? Ringing the bells? It was a perfect storm, really. Your mother passing on Christmas Eve, the night when a child is supposed to be at their happiest. From that point on, the holiday was tainted for you. You hurt with every breath you've breathed since, but the anniversary of her death bridges you to our world. It's when your despair is at its peak, ripe for collection. A knot formed in the pit of my stomach. As hard as it was to overcome the Shadow Man's visits, it was nothing compared to the pain I felt every single day over the loss of my mother, even as an adult. When I was 6 years old, I wrote a letter to Santa, asking for a cure. It would be my Christmas gift to see her better and walking around again. The cancer took her anyway, and it destroyed our family. When the Shadow Man first came up those stairs years ago, I desperately hoped it was Santa, so I could ask him to bring her back. The tears came without warning and quickly wet my face. Chelsea, don't fret. You're one of the lucky ones. Most people have their soul ripped apart until the day they die, and are banished into the ether with all the other abominations. But you've lasted far longer than the rest, well into adulthood. Your soul is tarnished, but you can still cling to life with a vicious grip, the likes of which I've never seen. I wiped my tears and looked back at the man, a smug expression painted across his face. So what is this? You're letting me go? A boisterous laughter bounced off the cubicles and ran in my ears. Quite the contrary, Chelsea. Now that your soul is damaged, I want to remap it, insert my own pieces, and build a better weapon. With you, we can extract more energy, enough to sustain us for centuries to come. My heart sank when I realized what he was saying. The Shadow Man. I would become a creature like him. No! I refuse! Oh, Chelsea, you don't have a choice in the matter. He snapped his fingers and we were in another room. I was strapped down in a chair and could not move, much as I tried. The man came around wearing a lab coat and brought with him a cart full of sharp utensils. Don't worry, Chelsea. This is only going to hurt a lot. I screamed, but it didn't faze him. He picked up a silver scalpel and carved deep into my chest. The pain was intolerable and I vocalized it. No need to cry, Chelsea. You have a lot of tissue around your soul. But I'll get to it. Just you wait. It'll all be over soon. Though it shouldn't have been possible, he reached his arm all the way into me. The pain had yet to subside, but the sensation took the foreground. It was undoubtedly the strangest thing I've ever felt. Ah, there it is. Lucian, bring the pieces. Lucian stumbled in with a tray of jars, each with a faint orb of light inside, and then placed it on the cart. Thank you, Lucian. You may leave. The man awkwardly reached for a jar, his other arm still in my chest. Lucian still there, watching. Here, sir, let me help you. Lucian attempted to push the tray closer. It collided with the man's arm and fell to the floor, breaking every last jar and freeing the soul fragments within, creating a remarkable disk of light in the middle of the room that grew larger with each passing moment. The man pulled his arm out of my chest, God damn it, Lucian! I told you to leave! If the light from these souls reacts with hers, she could reconstitute and wake. We'll have to wait for the next bridge, you idiot! The light washed over the room and filled my field of view. I was entombed again, but not in darkness. It was a soothing energy that seemed to heal my wounds and render me painless. Then, like the darkness before it, it dissipated and transported me far, far away. In a strange turn of events, I had been saved. I awoke in the comfort of my bed at home, jumping upright with a loud gasp, taking in as much air as I could. After gathering some composure, I noticed a slight burning between my breasts, so I ran to the bathroom, removed my bra, and faced the mirror. That's when I saw it. It was a souvenir from heaven. A scar right where the man cut me open. A reminder of things to come. This Christmas Eve, when my despair bridges the gap between our worlds, I will be waiting. However foolish it may be, when I'm in heaven again, I will stop at nothing to see my mother. Now that I know an afterlife exists, it's the only thing on my mind. Mom, if you're out there listening somewhere, watching over me, just know that I'm coming, and I won't let them have me. We'll be together again. You, me, and Dad. I promise. I'm going to bring you back. Whatever it takes. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed that story. If you did, be sure to leave a like and a comment, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. If you'd like me to narrate one of your stories, be sure to submit them to r/horrorxnerds on Reddit. You can also send me a direct message on Reddit at username nerdxcorexcreep or on Twitter at nerdxcorexcreep. I'd also like to give a huge shout out to my very first patron, As the Raven Dreams. He's a fellow creator and makes very excellent content, so be sure to check out his channel as well. And if you'd like to support the channel as well, be sure to visit patreon.com/nerdxcorexcreep. With that, I'll see you in the next video. Have a creepy night.